Hey there. Okay, this is a surprise chapter, chapter 39. I'm almost to the point where I'm having to write from scratch because I don't have the ending to the book, and what I do have, the chapters that I do have, you know, I got to the point with this book that I was just trying to finish it. I was like, oh, I wanted to get it published so bad. I wanted to get it out there and try to find an agent. So I was just like pounding out the chapters just to get to an end. And now that I go back and read it, I'm like, you know, some of it's good, some of it I can use, but some of it I'm like, so I'm trying to take my time. And like I said before, there might be a lull between chapters now because we're getting to that point where I'm having to redo and write from scratch a lot. Chapter 39 is a surprise. It's a very short chapter. What normally happened after the last chapter, which also was almost half of it was completely new. But after that there was a, well, I don't want to say too much, but let's just say there was a different chapter that came after chapter 38. And I started to write that chapter and it just didn't feel right to me. It just didn't feel right. And then I realized, and this might sound kind of stupid, but I think when you get to write characters, they kind of become real to you. You think about them a lot. You think about, you know, you run dialogue through your head. The characters kind of speak to each other in your head. You know, it's like you think about scenes. Scenes come to you, and it's almost like the characters are telling you their story. If you pay attention, you know, it's like the story continues in your head after you stop writing. And if you pay attention to what's going on in your head, you know, that's where the scenes, the best of the scenes that I have come up with have come from imagined scenes or pieces and bits of dialogue that I will play through my head while, like, I'm driving my car. I am finding this happens a lot while I'm driving, you know, especially late at night. I find myself thinking over possible scenarios and stuff like that. So I really, again, think that the ending of this book this time will be considerably better than the original. So it might even be a good thing that I've lost the original ending to this book. So chapter 39 is completely written from scratch. It might be a little bit rough because I just wrote it. I wrote it last night and today. It's completely from scratch, completely new. I wrote it because of a few snippets of dialogue that came into my head while I was driving. I feel like my characters were telling me we're not quite done with this yet. We're not quite ready to move on yet. And I paid attention. And I wrote this little scene. So this is chapter 39. It's only 6 pages long, but here it is. Song of Mornius, chapter 39. Stop! Florina stumbled to a halt beside Tarek as he held up his hand. He nodded when the others turned to look back, the ghost bobbing above their heads. We rest here, Tarek said, unshouldering his pack and dropping it with a heavy thud. Florina let go his arm and wandered to the glistening black wall of the tunnel. Across from her she saw Galen prop his staff up against the stone, his eyes squeezed shut as he focused on its burning. A shoulder bumped her hard, and she turned. How's the neck? The young man she knew as Lieutenant Roth whispered. He stood glaring down, his lips a thin line of anger below his unkempt mustache. She raised her hand, kneaded the back of her neck with tentative fingers. A little sore, she admitted, looking at him. Why? I wish he had left you dead, Roth hissed. My mother didn't get to come back. My little sister Gindel didn't get to come back. His brother. Florina saw tears fill the young man's eyes. Didn't get to come back. Florina felt a cold tingle down her spine. Left me dead? She whispered hoarsely. I was dead? Roth gritted his teeth and nodded. With his hands he made a hard, twisting motion. He did it himself, bitch. It looked to me like he enjoyed it. I know I sure did. Vilrena stumbled back, staring at his naked hatred screaming from his face. Above his head the ghost knight was watching her reaction, his transparent lips turned down sharply, his midnight eyes flaming his disgust and loathing. Softly she heard herself moan. Her legs suddenly weak, she was sliding down the wall to the floor. Numbly she stared, not seeing their faces any more, not seeing anything but the cold black stone. It reminded her of Malian, steadily wicking away all the warmth there was from life, but only ever giving back coldness. Her chin to her chest, Vilrena sat slumped on the glistening floor, her gaze on the wavering reflection of the ghost's green light on the stone beneath her hands. The young man, with a snort of disgust, had turned away at Tarek's command, but his words remained like a lance piercing her thoughts. Vaguely she knew it when Tarek gestured his little company forward, knew it when the ghost flitted out of sight into the tunnel to light the way, but she felt frozen beyond tears. Vilrena Vlyn, Abelard said sternly from above. She saw the giant's hand enter her field of vision. Come. Ignoring the hand, Vilrena put her palms to her face. Slowly she let herself sag forward over her raised knees. Then Tarek's boots appeared beside her. She heard his breathing, felt the weight of his displeasure glaring down. Vilrena? She heard the warning in his voice and shivered. Then he knelt, making it impossible to avoid his annoyance. She stared at a smear of dirt across his leather breastplate, her hands twitching at her sides. He says that you killed me, she whispered. You enjoyed it. You... She shuddered. Broke my neck. At once Tarek pivoted on his heel to glare up at Roth. You said this why exactly? He demanded. Taken aback by his commander's scowl, Roth kicked at the damp floor. I just thought she should know, Roth stammered. Well, you thought wrong, snapped Tarek. Angrily he jerked himself to his feet. We don't torture people. Torture? Tarek, I only meant, to cause her more pain is exactly what you meant. Isn't that torture? You're bullying her needlessly, Roth, and this stops right now. Roth stared at the floor while Tarek waited. He shook his head. Slowly Tarek nodded. If you can't show her compassion, then let her be. Yes, she slew my brother. No, I haven't forgotten. But I've also known her all my life. So please accept it that I may have some insight here that you don't. Now go on, said Tarek, and follow Argus. He gestured to the hint of green light down the tunnel. The rest of you, too, will be coming behind you. Galen, stay put. We need your light. Vilrena sat shivering, listening to the footsteps of the others recede. She gritted her teeth at the silence above her, the soft sound of breathing, the quiet wet slap of footsteps as Galen Laval stepped back in his worn boots, holding his staff high like a beacon of hope above her head. Again Tarek was crouching beside her. Fearing his reprimand, she kept her head lowered, her gaze on the tunnel's opposite wall. I had no choice, he said quietly. I found out Malian was linked to you. Death was the only way we had to sever that link. She shook her head numbly. Her eyes were dry, but in her chest her heart was flaying at her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I wish you had let me stay dead. To her surprise, his fingers brushed at the dirt beside her mouth. No, you don't, he said softly. Then his fingers lifted her left hand from the cold, rocky floor. Tightly he held it between both of his. At once Vilrena stiffened, remembering Men's. She pulled against his grasp, pressed at his chest with her free hand. No. His voice almost seemed gentle now. Vilrena, no. Tears blurred her sight, streaming hot and unstoppable down her grimy face. Slowly he pulled her forward against his chest, his right arm enfolding her, supporting her as she cried. I never wanted you to find this out, he said. I thought I wanted your death too, until that moment. I thought it was the only right answer to what you did. But I was wrong. Killing you was the hardest thing I've done." She nodded against his chest, hiccuping as she struggled for control. She managed. I don't hate you," Tarek said softly. "Not everyone here does. I know Vurgen doesn't. Galen doesn't. Abelard, I suspect she feels rage, not hate, same as me. Remember what you told me back there," he continued. "If we find a cave-in and have to dig through, remember how you warned the air could be poison? That was a help, Florina. You're trying, and I do see that." With effort, she pulled in a shaky breath. She sat back as slowly he let her go. Still he held her hand, his gaze intense on her face. "After all you suffered, this is the last place you should be, but I need every help. I need your knowledge of these tunnels. Argus is a ghost. He's forgotten how it is to be, well, human. Roth is a boy who lost his family. You cannot let their anger unravel you so much, not when we're this close. I need you to stay alert. I need you aware and strong, like you used to be. No more of this." Gently his fingers touched her tears. "Too much more of this and you'll get sick." Florina hung her head. "That woman you remember, she's dead, Commander. I'm responsible for my father's death. I couldn't do anything to save your brother. I do wish you had left me dead. I do." There came a soft hiss as he pulled a short, slender knife from the pocket along his boot. "No." Staring fiercely into her eyes, he set its keen edge at her throat. She closed her eyes at the icy touch of unyielding metal. He pressed ever so slightly, and she shuddered, harder still until she felt the metal nip her skin. She gasped at the warm trickle down her neck. Her eyes flew open. Then she was clutching at his fingers with both hands, frantically pushing the blade down, away from her throat. He let her, nodding at her expression. Then he drew a cloth from his pack and touched it softly to her neck. "You see?" he said firmly. "No, you don't."